Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling something, well, pretty ambitious. We're trying to connect the dots between centuries of history, abstract science like physics, and actual medical practices.
Yeah.
To see how ideas about race, technology, and really the drive for resource extraction, how they fundamentally shape science itself. They weren't just happening alongside it.
Exactly. It forces you to look at how some, basic ideas about efficiency and energy were actually built on, well, exploiting people.
Right.
We've got three main threads here. First, a look at plantation labor and how it connected conceptually to physics, thermodynamics specifically.
Okay.
Then there's this biohistorical idea linking the slave trade to modern high blood pressure.
That's fascinating.
And finally, a really stark example of bias in medical tech from the 1960s involving X-rays. What's shocking is how certain ideas just stick around across centuries in different fields.
That continuity is exactly what we need to unpack. So let's start where this industrial process really gets going, the plantation. We need to picture the New World plantation, say, mid-18th century onwards, not just as a farm, but as this high-volume, really systematized industrial operation, almost horrifyingly so.
Yeah, and that shift in thinking, it changed how people were viewed, reduced them to just components.
Components in a machine.
And we don't need to speculate about that view. It's right there in the sources. You have Samuel Martin, a big planter in the West Indies, writing in 1754.
What did he say?
He said, "A plantation ought to be considered as a well-constructed machine, plain as day."
Wow.
And when listing the essential parts, he lumps people in with the equipment. He says, Negroes, cattle, mules, and horses. They were the nerves, or the main springs of the whole thing.
So early on, it's just about raw energy, like metabolic output, interchangeable with animals.
Pretty much just brute force horsepower, essentially.
But then things shifted in the 19th century, right? With cotton, sugar, what historians call the second slavery. How was that different conceptually?
Yeah. Right. The second slavery was all about massive scale-up. Industrialization, huge expansion, especially in the American South, the Caribbean. Demand for crops like cotton and sugar just exploded.
And technology changed too. Steam power.
Exactly. Steam engines, more mechanization. And this meant the idea of the enslaved person shifted again. Not just metabolic energy anymore, but an integrated industrial resource.
Integrated how?
Like part of the actual mechanical process. Conceptually, they were like the gears in the cotton gin or maybe the fuel for the steam engine's boiler, part of the flow.
And the systems used to manage this.
Yeah.
This human resource were incredibly engineered, weren't they? I'm thinking of the pushing system on cotton plantations.
Oh, absolutely. That wasn't just random brutality. It was applied management.
Applied management.
Yeah, a system combining physical torture, really detailed logistics, and meticulous accounting, all to enforce these production quotas that just kept going up and up.
So overseers treated people literally like human machines.
Yeah. They did. The records even tracked things like, well, how much whipping related to output, trying to find the sweet spot for maximum efficiency.
Wait, they were optimizing whipping, measuring pain against yield.
That's it. It moves the violence beyond just cruelty. It becomes a kind of cold industrial calculation. Pain as an input cost.
That's chilling.
It is. One planter in Mississippi actually wrote that the workers' hands moved as if mechanical engines hummed inside the enslaved.
Wow.
The whole point was getting the absolute maximum output through total exhaustion and control. Basically, treating the body like an engine that needed constant violent oil-in to keep it going.
It sounds like a direct precursor to some modern, maybe problematic, ideas about the human machine in efficiency studies.
It really foreshadows it, this systematic, quantified, violent extraction of energy.
Okay, so that sets up the next step. We have this industrial protocol honed on the plantation. How does that thinking, that approach, jump into abstract European science in the 19th century, specifically thermodynamics?
Yeah, this is where it gets really quite jarring. Thermodynamics emerges mid-19th century, right alongside the huge expansion of steam power and all the industrial capital flowing in, partly from these colonial extractive economies.
Okay, people like Clausius, Helmholtz,
Yeah.
they're figuring out the laws of energy.
Right. The first law, energy conservation, you can't create or destroy it, just change its form. And the second law, entropy energy tends to dissipate, become less useful.
But the link, how does plantation logic get into physics? Was Helmholtz reading planter manuals? Probably not.
No, not directly like that. The link is in the conceptual framework, how they thought about energy. The laws of thermodynamics were developed using the steam engine as the prime example. It was all about useful work extracted from heat. The efficiency of the engine became the metaphor for, well, everything.
The whole cosmos, even.
In a way, yes. Helmholtz, for instance, explicitly compared the human body to a heat engine. He talked about muscle metabolism, what he called craft, like productive force, and directly equated it to the engine's power.
So the body itself gets defined in these economic, industrial terms. Its value is its craft, its capacity for useful work.
Exactly. And think about the wider system. The capital funding the research, the need for concepts like useful work, it's partly fueled by commodities like sugar.
Which, as some sources point out, were feeding the European working class, right? Keeping their engines running.
Precisely. It's almost a closed loop conceptually. Enslaved bodies provide energy for raw materials, which become food for factory workers who operate steam engines, whose principles then define the scientific laws used to measure human productive capacity itself.
It's a disturbing loop. But then abolition happens. How does the thinking change then? The symbolic link between blackness and the productive machine must have become awkward, especially for those justifying continued empire.
Yeah, a major shift happens. The machine, the engine, it gets conceptually whitened. It becomes the symbol of rational, efficient, white industrial progress.
And blackness.
Blackness gets repositioned. It's no longer the source of craft. Instead, it's framed as an entropic barrier.
Entropic barrier, like chaos, waste.
Exactly. Disorder, something that actively prevents the smooth, efficient running of industrial society, gets in the way of progress and energy.
So the white machine is productive force, and the black body is now the friction, the inefficiency the system needs to overcome.
That's the ideological move. You see it explicitly with people like the American physician George M. Beard in 1881.
What did Beard argue?
He claimed black people cannot summon as much energy for a moment in an emergency as the whites, since they have less control over their energies. He's basically saying they lack the biological self-discipline needed for the industrial age.
So redefining them as inherently chaotic, embodying entropy itself, a barrier to advancement.
Standing in the way of white civilization's energy accumulation. It's a complete flip.
Okay, so we see this continuity. The body viewed either as a motor to extract from, or as a defect needing management. Physics framed it as a motor. How did biology start to frame survival under these horrific conditions?
Right.
Let's shift to that hypertension hypothesis.
Right. This jumps us into modern health disparities. We have this stark epidemiological fact. On average, blood pressure is significantly higher in black populations in the Western Hemisphere compared to black populations in Africa.
A known difference. And genetics play a role in blood pressure generally. We know that.
For sure. But the difference between these specific groups points towards something historical, something rooted in the trauma of the slave trade and slavery itself.
Which brings us to the slavery hypothesis of hypertension. What was the specific pressure? What conditions were so brutal they could actually change gene frequencies over generations?
It boils down to incredibly high mortality rates. The Middle Passage, the early years on plantations, the seasoning period, these were just death traps, especially from the 16th to 19th centuries, low fertility too.
And the main killers.
Overwhelmingly, it was acute salt-depleting diseases. Think constant diarrhea, fevers, vomiting, conditions where you lose sodium incredibly fast.
Leading to dehydration, shock.
Yeah.
Deadly stuff without modern medicine.
Exactly. So the hypothesis goes, in that environment, individuals who just happen to have a genetic predisposition, an enhanced ability to hold on to sodium.
They had a survival advantage.
A huge one. If your body naturally conserved salt better, you are much more likely to survive those bouts of illness, survive the seasoning, live long enough to reproduce, and pass that salt-conserving tendency on.
So it's a trait selected for by unbelievably harsh conditions.
Yes. A trait that literally meant life or death in that specific deadly environment, repeated over centuries, became more common in the gene pool of those who survived and their descendants in the Americas.
And the devastating irony is that this survival trait, crucial back then,
Is now a major health risk.
right,
In today's world, with high-salt diets being so common, especially in Western societies, that same salt-conserving ability becomes a liability. It contributes directly to salt-sensitive high blood pressure.
a tragic legacy, written to biology by history.
And the hypothesis suggests ways to test it, like comparing sodium metabolism in detail between West African and Western Hemisphere black populations.
It's a powerful example of how the past shapes present health. Okay, let's move into the 20th century. These ideas, these assumptions about the non-white body being different or needing correction, They didn't just vanish.
No, they got baked into the system, institutionalized, even in supposedly objective modern medical technology. The X-ray dosing story is a prime example.
Tell us about this race correction for X-rays. What was happening?
It's pretty shocking, actually. In the 1950s, the 1960s, X-ray technicians were routinely taught. This was in textbooks and manufacturer guidelines, even from major companies like General Electric.
Taught what specifically?
They were taught to use significantly higher radiation doses on Black patients.
Higher doses. Why? What was the rationale?
It was based on completely unsubstantiated, frankly racist beliefs from the 19th century. The idea that Black people had thicker and denser bones or muscle or skin, just folklore, really.
But hold on, wouldn't the X-ray image itself show that wasn't true? If the bones weren't actually denser, wouldn't the higher dose just wash out the image? Make it useless?
You'd think so. That's what's so wild. The bias was so ingrained that the actual evidence right there on the film was apparently ignored or misinterpreted.
Wow.
Technicians were trained to see the white patient as the default, the normal. Black patients needed an adjustment, so they'd crank up the exposure, sometimes 40, even 60% higher.
60%, that's a huge increase in radiation dose.
Significant increase, and it was standard practice based on nothing scientific, just this lingering myth.
And this just went on unchallenged. Who finally called it out?
It took an outsider, Ralph Nader, the consumer activist.
Okay.
In 1968, during Senate hearings on radiation safety, he brought it up. He had the textbooks, the guidelines. He pointed the finger at institutions like the American College of Radiology.
That must have caused a stir.
Yeah.
Public hearings.
Oh, yeah. Big time. The publicity forced the issue. Federal health officials, the National Center for Radiological Health, they had to investigate quickly.
And their conclusion?
They found absolutely zero scientific basis for adjusting X-ray doses based on race. Zero. They strongly urged that the practice be stopped immediately, removed from all training, all clinics.
It's just a stark lesson in how easily bias gets embedded, isn't it? Treating white as normal and everyone else as needing a dangerous, unproven correction.
Exactly.
What a thread we followed. From plantations literally defining energy laws, to survival traits becoming modern risk factors, to bias being built right into medical machines.
Yeah, the common theme, the thread running through all of it, is how these racial assumptions get translated into the defaults, into the background settings of science, economics, medicine.
Right.
Whether it's physics calling blackness waste energy or X-ray machines giving higher doses based on race, the underlying assumption is often that the non-white body is some kind of deviation that needs managing or correcting or just reducing to its extractable value.
But it's important to note, too, that alongside this history of reduction, there's always been resistance, critique.
Absolutely.
Especially in Black culture, music, for instance.
Yeah.
There's this tradition of, like, finding the soul in the machine, right? Taking technology and repurposing it, pushing back against that purely extractive view of human worth.
That resistance is crucial. But this whole history, it leaves us with a really pointed question for right now, doesn't it?
Meaning?
Well, think about it. If these biases could get so deeply embedded in physics concepts, in biological hypotheses, and even in something as seemingly straightforward as an X-ray dose.
Okay.
And if that X-ray bias persisted for decades, basically unnoticed by the experts using it every day until an outsider flagged it.
Then what are we missing today?
Exactly. What contemporary algorithms are we using? What machine learning models deciding things? What standard medical guidelines are currently operating with some kind of hidden, baked-in historical bias? A modern form of race correction.
Hidden in proprietary code, maybe,
Yeah.
or complex math few people understand.
Precisely. If a 40% dose increase could hide in plain sight in a textbook, imagine what could be buried in an opaque algorithm that might decide who gets a loan, or who's prioritized for an organ, or who's flagged as high risk by predictive policing software.
It really forces us to think critically about the defaults in the technologies we rely on now.
That's the scrutiny we absolutely need. What are today's unquestioned assumptions?